This is the very first picture of my son. Now, while most parents are super excited at the birth of their son, I was incredibly nervous. I was almost paranoid. Raising a kid is never an easy job, but raising a black boy in this culture, now that's an especially difficult challenge. So let me take a moment and share with you my story. This is my oldest brother. Between the ages of 9 and around 12, when we first moved to North St. Louis County, he was tormented regularly by a group of white boys in our neighborhood. Almost every day he had to run home from school with a gang of kids close on his heels, calling him every name in the book. Now, he never told his parents, our parents, about this until later, until he was much older. And I guess maybe he was ashamed, but regardless, that kind of torment has a lasting impact on him, on me, and probably on those boys as well, hopefully. Now let's fast forward 30 years or so. After my son was born, we enrolled him in a neighborhood preschool, and that was where we met Mr. Brooks, an incredibly rare black male pre-K instructor. And there's a whole conversation we really need to have about the value of that experience, but we'll do that later. This preschool instructor, Mr. Brooks, taught my son how to read early, and here's how he did it. He sat me down, and he taught me how to teach my child how to read. Now, I am not sure if I've ever been more deliberately schooled than I was by Mr. Brooks. He told me everything I needed to do. He spelled it out in great detail, and then he followed up to make sure I was doing it. Now, Mr. Brooks was the very first person to require me to assume my proper role as my child's head coach. He made it clear that there was no other role that even came close. And that lesson was reinforced just a few years later. So let's fast forward again, now to 2008. Barack Obama's ascension. It happened during the same year my son was going to start kindergarten. Remember that? Remember how many of us were thinking that we had reached a race-neutral society? Boy, those were good memories, weren't they? But the week before my son started kindergarten, there was a crisis at the school, and here's the situation. So the principal's grandson was starting school at the very same time as my son. And in the principal's excitement of having her grandson at the school, she told her staff that she wanted her grandson to be in a class with other good white neighborhood kids. Now, this was in 2008. This was not 1968. So 3 days before school started, I attended the parent meeting where the principal was there, and she admitted and apologized for her statements. But that part of the conversation I don't even want to focus on. I want to talk really about what was going on with her. I wanted to focus on how I reacted to her admission. And I'm embarrassed to say that I was still considering sending my son to that school. Now, why would I do that? Why would I tolerate that type of behavior from the leader of a school? And here's the reason. The reason was that I didn't think I had any other options. Now, there's a quote by a professor named Jordan Peterson that I use sometimes, and it goes like this. If you have no options, then you can't negotiate. If you can't negotiate, then you are a slave. And he was right. A few days before school was going to start, I'm sitting here and I feel like I have no options. I didn't feel like I could find another school. I didn't feel like I could negotiate or demand change in the school leadership. I was thinking and functioning like a slave. And because of that, I was willing to accept almost any indignity. Whatever that school gave me, I felt like I had to accept it, even if it gave me a principal who didn't want my son in her grandson's class. So that weekend before school started, my wife and I spent the next days thinking and praying about what we're going to do. And finally, the night before his first day, we put him to bed and kissed him goodnight like every parent does to their beautiful child. And finally, around 10 p.m., that was when we realized we actually had an option, that we could do things ourselves. And we became, at that moment, what I call reluctant homeschoolers. Now, I'm not here to tell you that you should homeschool your kids, but a lot of you are testing it right now, reluctantly. Others of you are kind of disgusted at what you're seeing in terms of your child's schooling, what they're learning, and like me, you feel like you have no options. And that brings us to the purpose of this group. This group is to help you understand your options, to support you in your journey, and to help you negotiate whichever way you decide to go. Now, I also want you to believe that the beautiful dreams that you have for your boy, your beautiful black boy, that those dreams are still possible, because they are. Now, this is my son now. Of all the places, he's about to start school, though. Check this out. Of all the places, he's going to start at the University of Virginia in the fall. That's in Charlottesville. A great school, don't get me wrong. But it's the same school that had this marching through its campus just 3 years ago. Now, this is nauseating to parents, but it's uniquely concerning to the parents of a black boy. We feel it acutely, don't we? But for me, despite all of this, I stand here speaking to you completely unafraid about my son's future. I'm at complete peace about it. Why? Because I know that he is extremely well prepared. I know that he has wisdom beyond his years, amazing self-control, intelligence, and strength beyond what most expect of any young man, black or otherwise. He also has a strong faith that has grounded him and kept his head from getting too big. Now, he's not perfect. He's 18. But he is extremely well prepared. And this confidence that I feel, it didn't come because of the institution we call school. Nor did it come because I'm that smart. I'm not. It came because of one reason. Well, really, multiple reasons. It came because of the many parents who went before me, who then coached and guided me. And sometimes these parents kicked me in the butt to make sure I was doing right by my son. So thank you, Thomas Glenn. Thank you, Lionel Jellins. Arva Howard, thank you. Mary Peters, Rebecca Barnes, Robert Rivera. Thank you, Neil Anderson. Thank you, Carlos Solis. Thank you, Michael Haywood, Don Taylor. I could go on and on and on. But this LinkedIn group is my attempt to do for you what they did for me, to pay it forward as far and as fast as possible. I want every parent of a black boy to assume a new level of strategic thinking, to recognize that normal in America is broken, particularly for our schools. I want you to have the same level of peace that I feel right now, that same sense of calm in knowing that your son will be ready for a world that is going to expect less of him, a world that is sometimes going to be hostile to him, but a world that is also changing incredibly fast and creating completely new opportunities. And parents, I'm going to tell you, it is going to be principally your job, not the school, your job to get your child ready to thrive in this world. And I want to help you do it. Now, if any of this sounds of interest, then please share this with at least one other parent or an ally who can add to the dialogue in this group. I'm super excited about it, very much looking forward to the conversations and getting our boys ready for the world.